Right, yeah, smaller scale, one house. So I started Hawks Architecture 11 years ago, and my wife and I had the kind of humble ambition to, like most architects, to design our own house. And we had a plot, and we had a sealed bid thing, and we got this plot, and all of a sudden we can fulfil our vision. So what we kind of were on a bit of a journey. We lived in London. We wanted to kind of live in a more sustainable way. We were growing veg, but we wanted to grow more. We wanted to kind of be more in control of our lifestyles and stuff like that. So we were able to kind of use the designing and the building of our house as an extension of that kind of journey we were on. That was our house, and it was on the Grand Design Show many years ago now. And very grateful to that programme for kind of helping to sort of stimulate us and awareness of what we were doing. And it's grown into something I couldn't have expected, but we get to kind of go to work, and every day we have to design exceptional houses in the countryside, and it's a lot of fun. What I'm going to do, it's an amazing piece of policy. So this is our house. This is the journey we went on. Some of you may have seen it on telly. And the first question, is that the one that fell down? Yes, that's the one. Fell down, is it? Yes. So you can ask me questions about that if you want to later on, or there might be some other interesting things you might want to ask questions about. But anyway, it was brilliant. Along the way, we were trying to live in a kind of more holistically sustainable way. I was passionate about trying to have the building use local materials. I was passionate about off-gassing. I was passionate about trying to sequester waste in buildings, not create waste. All sorts of stuff that we're talking about now. But there was far kind of less information around, even sort of 10, 11 years ago. Passive house was something being talked about. There were none in this country. The principles all sounded brilliant. So I got loads of people involved. Cambridge University were involved. They were my structural engineers, Cambridge University. And they were all giving me this really interesting information. I took it on board. I was like a sponge, loving it. Embedded it all in this house. But the thing about, at the time, passive houses were things that were, and I haven't got a slide, I've got a slide that sort of shows these sorts of passive houses that you could look up on the internet 11 years ago, and they were ghastly things. It was kind of, don't worry about what I look like. I'm a passive house. I'm really good. I'm really low energy. But I kind of, but I want to live in a place that inspires me and uplifts me. It's full of light and joy and fun. And this is my house. I look at that and I'm like as excited looking at it today as I ever will be. And the passion, the joy that gives me in here and in here is just, I know it's my house, but I love it. So it all came from an earlier version of this piece of policy. Now, we actually had a little bungalow on our site, but replacement dwelling policy allows obviously that to be replaced, but not for it to be as big as, it was a little like 2-bedroom tiny thing. But we were in a kind of 1 acre plot at the time. So, but there was this piece of policy that I was very grateful for Maidstone Planning Authority to be on board with what it was we were trying to do. And they basically said, well, there was PPS 7 paragraph 11, an earlier version of the policy, that said, look, if something's exceptional enough, then we can support that. So they helped, they were very proactive in helping. I'm not sure I've had the confidence to have gone on much of a fight, like we often have to these days. But anyway, there was a policy that basically said if you do something that's of exceptional quality, you can be granted planning consent. The current version of that policy, it sits at paragraph 79, bullet point E, and basically, some things of exceptional quality, truly outstanding or innovative, helps to raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, reflecting the high standards in architecture, significantly enhance immediate setting and sensitive to defining characteristics of the local area. If you can do all those things, you can get planning consent. Journey of the policy, the kind of, the bold's not really showing up in here, but there's the core ingredients of the policy are in there right from the beginning, back in 1990. So it's a 22-year-old piece of policy. First introduced Gummer's Law, the country house clause, got 200 acres, you want a country house in the traditional English country house sense. This is a way of doing it. Labour government wanted to try and get rid of it. It got, I've got a laser, haven't I? Laser beam. They wanted to get rid of it. It got adapted. And then you got the version paragraph 11, PPS 7 paragraph 11, very occasionally, and then the introduction of words like groundbreaking. It's interesting. I'll talk a little bit about that. There's a few little bits I'm going to talk about through this talk today. But the core, helping to raise the standards of design, significantly enhance the setting, sensitive to defining character. And those threads you can see in there, in the subsequent 2012 MPPF and then the latest revisions, 2018, 2019, are all in there. But it's evolved through time, and I'm going to pick up on some of the kind of implications of some of that evolution later on. But any one of those circles I could talk about for hours. So I haven't got much time today. So I'm going to try and just pick some of the boxes. But in amongst the few words of that policy, there is so much nuance and so much misunderstanding, misrepresentation. And 22 years on, it's a shame in a way that it's still so misunderstood. And that people like, planning officers here that may have dealt with paragraph 79 schemes, and you might have been sitting there going, oh God. The quality, design, I sit on design review panels myself, and people present these schemes and you go, they've made decisions wrong on day one, and you go, come on. The first version of the example, first version of the policy, right back in 1997, said, where is it? Highest quality in architecture and landscape design. Never got carried on in the subsequent versions. How many paragraph 79 schemes I've seen sat on, reviewed, where they said the architect's there, he's got a scheme, models, the whole shooting match, and they've not had a landscape architect involved, even though they're working in the open countryside. And you think, what? So for me, the policy could be improved if they put landscape back in there. Yay to the landscape architects out there. But the point about the policy, oh, cool. Something's gone on with the formatting there. The point about the policy is it is a hurdle designed to be able to, Jonathan, you sort your formatting, that's right. It's designed to be a hurdle, not a prison fence. So again, I've met, there was a guy on a panel review once reviewing one of our schemes, and he says, there's only ever one house, one Para 79 house I felt should ever have got consent. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake. It is a piece of policy that's designed to be got over. There'll be people who fall, there'll be people who don't even want to go there, but it is designed to be able to be got over, as opposed to it being an insurmountable prison fence. I find this, some councils, you can go and meet them, engage in design review and talk them through a process, and there's an engagement, a dialogue. But there are some local authorities, I'm afraid, that we come across, they're not interested. But, oh no, my best, Jonathan, my best slide. You got, I thought, oh, my golden egg laying flying unicorn. Can you redo that? That's my face, that's my best image. That's my money shot. I'm going to have to get my iPad out. They are not supposed to be golden egg laying flying unicorns. Can you sort that out by then? Because I've got to have my image of my golden egg laying. It took me ages in Photoshop to do that. Thank you. I want to get a T-shirt with it on. They are designed to be achievable. And since I did my house back in 2007, been fortunate enough to be able to work on quite a few. What's going on here, Jonathan? What's going on here? It was a PDF. The first two or three we did were replacing a dwelling but with something much larger, and then we got this one was inside a scheduled ancient monument. Grand Designs are filming that one at the moment, and then. This was one in Greenbelt and AONB. This was, again, outside a settlement, but close to, these are two in Ashford Borough. This one's up in North Yorkshire. This one's in the Cotswolds AONB near Cheltenham. It's near Horsham. AONB next to Greenbelt, and Triple SI near Cheltenham. Stratford upon Avon. This one's 70 metres away from the edge of the country, right on top of the White Cliffs. Triple SI. Heritage Coast AONB, Berkshire AONB, Northamptonshire, next to a conservation area, next to a settlement. Then more recently this year, this one's, we got it down as a Para 79, but I suspect now it might actually come under paragraph 131. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then last month we got planning consent for a new house in the high-wheeled AONB and allowed appeal. So We're working on quite a few. They're all over the place. some of the context of the policy. It's a moving feast. The policy is moving. Some people say the bar keeps getting higher. We'll talk about that later. But it's some of the context of Para 79 has been changing over time, and one of the interesting topics is about isolation. So we've had situations before where we're looking at a site that's right next to a settlement, but it's going, well, it's not isolated, so the policy can't apply. But it was a kind of like almost like it felt like a policy void. And prior to the Braintree case, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Braintree case, but there was a case last year that basically gave a bit more context to the concept of what isolation means. So, crudely speaking, I'm not a planning consultant, so forgive me, I'm just a lowly architect. But the way it used to kind of broadly work was, were you within a settlement boundary? Yes, well, Para 79 wouldn't apply, different policies would apply. No, well, were you close to a settlement? But it kind of didn't really matter whether the answer was yes or no, it was deemed to be isolated. Because if you were in the middle of nowhere, there's nowhere that could be seen to be an advantage over something that actually did have the benefit of some connectivity and sustainable transport links, etc. But then so Braintree was kind of whatever it was, early part, first half of 2018. We were working on a Para 79 scheme. This is a guy who invented Robot Wars. Fascinating bloke, engineer. And this was in the Mendip Hills, in the AONB. So we submitted this scheme pre-Braintree case, so before there was this kind of adaptation of the context of what isolation meant. It was refused by Bath and North East Somerset, not on the principle of isolation, but they just couldn't get their heads around it. We'd gone through design review process with the design review panel and fostered the support of the panel. It went to appeal, and by the time it went to appeal, Braintree had happened, and then we're kind of looking at we're having to look at it in the context of post-Braintree. So what we had in this case is a loose-knit settlement, hill rising up, strategic view up here, great long-distance views. And here's our site, an open part of the site, which actually, so spatially, if you like, there was an association with the loose-knit settlement. Of putting something on here and associating with loose-knit settlement in terms of plan context. But spatially, the house related to actually several agricultural buildings in the wider landscape. So we actually thought it appropriate to develop a language of the architecture that actually responded to those agricultural building characteristics. So as it happened, the Mendip Hills AONB had an agricultural buildings design guide. And it was quite interesting developing a design narrative that actually looked at the rules of designing agricultural buildings in an AONB landscape and layering that in as part of our design process of developing a dwelling. And that was all very interesting, and we all thought it was lovely. So what was interesting about the open part of the site is although in plan terms it associated itself with this loose-knit settlement, spatially, because of this tree belt through here, visually you could never see this part of the site in association with those other buildings. So yeah, that's why we kind of related it to those agricultural buildings, this big farm down here, other buildings over here. But what happened with after Braintree was the context changed a little bit. So it's kind of like, is it within settlement? No. There was no defined settlement boundary in this case. Is it close to the settlement? Yes. So Para 79 didn't apply. So it's kind of, okay, so what policy could apply? So in this case, at the appeal hearing, the inspector, Mr. Papworth, said, well, paragraph 131 could be applied, which is another design-led piece of policy. And he said, well, he referred to it as kind of bringing the bar down. So the bar comes down from Para 79. And you're looking at paragraph 131, which kind of, if you read it, it's a bit like Para 79 light. So it has, great weight should be given to outstanding or innovative designs which promote high levels of sustainability or help raise the standards of design more generally in an area. But then the last bit is very interestingly different, so long as they fit in with the overall form and layout of their surroundings. So I've started off with a case study, which is the only case in 12 years that we've actually lost. Yeah, I mean, that's not the best choice. But so our appeal got dismissed because we couldn't argue. It was a good decision. Full respect to Mr. Papworth for this decision. But we couldn't argue that our proposals, our architectural proposition, fitted in with the overall form and layout of the surroundings. It didn't meet paragraph 131, and paragraph 79 couldn't apply. So for me, it's very consistent. I think the inspectorate made a very clear decision, and full respect to that. What we did establish is that we can get a house on there, and I think the design review panel are still involved with a kind of a simpler form of house that uses paragraph 131. But earlier this year, we've been working on this scheme, and again, we've been working on it for some time, and this is in Dover District. And it was, that's the site there. So the guy owned this house here, he owned this land here. So again, this for me is a non-isolated location. Now, Dover District Council, they have given it planning consent, but they've never put the officer's report up online. So don't actually know which policy justification they actually have given it under. So at the moment, I'm saying, well, maybe it was paragraph 131. It's got to be quite nice to know, wouldn't it? Put their officer's report online. Maybe one day they'll do that. That'd be nice. But the interesting thing about this site is there were other buildings around, and it did respond to the form and layout of the surroundings there. So I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why they gave it planning consent. It'd be really nice to know, wouldn't it? After all that time they sat on it. So the context of isolation is interesting. Well, it's almost like one of the first tests when we're looking at a site now is it isolated? Is Para 79 actually the piece of policy that is relevant here? So another one that comes up, for me, these final two tests are generally the ones that are more difficult to get people to get their head around, quantify, objectify. Bless you. And sensitive to defining character is a really interesting one, because it's often what I hear back is do something the same as. We've talked about this. I've talked about it so many times with different people, but it's not saying do something the same as things that were done in the past. It's demonstrating sensitivity to defining character. But we are here to be doing something exceptional, creative, moving something on, doing something of exceptional quality. We've got a scheme that's just outside the South Downs National Park, and it's quite an open site, and we've got a client who's got quite a bold ambition, and they're quite eccentric. And we've got a location that's quite open. It's not in the South Downs National Park, it has views to it. And it's on the site, we've got these big pits, there's flint everywhere. You know, the flint, when you look at the fields around it, there's big lumps of flint everywhere. It's used in buildings around the area, everywhere. What we were finding in doing the landscape visual impact assessment, in understanding that we did lifestyle analysis with the client liked the idea of living in a house where the kids had freedom to kind of run around the house, go upstairs, come out, go down a slide to go out into the garden. They wanted a dining room that had no windows. They wanted to be able to come out from behind a secret wall with like a tray of whiskey. They had some really quite, and we find this stuff out because we do quite a lot of analysis of people's lifestyle. We want to know what time they wake up. Do they have an alarm clock? What time does it go off? Do the sun shine through their bedroom window when they wake up in the morning? And myriad other questions to get really under the skin of the way they want to live, rather than just asking what do you want, because they'll just tell you they want a big open plan living and dining space, and so many bedrooms, all of them with en suites. So in our understanding of the client, and in the work we did to understand the baseline condition of the site, how it fitted into its context, the landscape visual impact side of things as well, we started to kind of build a very deep understanding of site and a very deep understanding of our client. And then just had this thought of what the qualities of a piece of flint are. They're white, soft and curvy on the outside, black, hard and sharp on the inside. And it was one of those moments, as we try to sort of develop a solution, there was a thought, if we flip those things, those qualities on their head, it opened up a whole architectural language. So in this area, when you're walking through footpaths and things in the area, you see farmsteads, and they generally look like they're a series of cluster of buildings contained by a wall. And from a long distance, they the settlements all seem very contained. They also sit back generally inside a distant tree line. And we thought that was quite interesting as a characteristic of how settlement sits in that landscape. And we also thought if we have black, hard and sharp on the outside as a quality of flint, we could explore that architecturally in lots of different ways. So we went about doing that, and in the treatment of the building from the outside, we could play with those kind of minutiae qualities of flint, but not in a way that flint is used generally in buildings, because that's how it was used in the past. We want to use it in a different way. And then when the idea was when you approach the house, gate opens, and you open up to one of the courtyards, you see inside that space, and you get this experience and go, and it creates something extraordinarily exciting, very much contained. But when you go in the house, all those eccentricities of the client are able to be expressed through an exploration of effectively this quality of flint. And it was a wonderful way of taking something that was something of a defining quality of the local area, local material, if you like, and letting it inform a whole architectural language. But there are places where we're using flint. They loved the flint house. They said, "Oh yes, we love the flint house. We'd love to do something like that." But you said, "Well, they used flint in a different way, beautiful way, and the Flint man did a beautiful job of expressing flint in lots of different ways on Rothschild House. But obviously, we can't do something the same as that. So we're exploring it in a different way here." Right. There's other examples I could use from that, but I'm kind of mindful of how much time there is. Another topic I could talk all day about is this part of the test here, truly outstanding or innovative. I'm going to focus on just the word innovative because there's such a lot of misunderstanding in the word innovative, because they're generally there's an association of the word innovative as meaning inventive, pioneering, or groundbreaking. Now, going back to the policy, the very first version of paragraph 79, as we call it, paragraph 3.21, the Country House Clause, didn't have the term innovative in it at all. When the 2004 PPS 7 version came out, the term innovative nature of design got introduced. Such a design should be truly outstanding and groundbreaking. Now, that term didn't make it into the MPPF in 2012, and for good reason. Because there's an interesting situation here. If I be a planning officer right now, if I'm being a planning officer and I'm trying to assess a scheme submitted under PPS 7 at that stage, if someone's coming to me with something that they're saying is truly groundbreaking, never been done before, as a planning officer, I'm going, how much weight can I? Do you know it's going to work? It's kind of the lab says it's good. The lab things we've had done say it's going to work. It should be fine. It's like, how much weight can I put to something unless you can tell me it's actually going to work? So it's kind of, not so sure. The more likely you are to be able to demonstrate that it's actually going to work, the more likely it is it's been used somewhere, and the less likely you are to be able to say it's groundbreaking. So it creates a kind of an interesting little cycle. So there's nothing new under the sun. And for every house of this type to be trying to throw some trick at it to actually try and meet this was quite a weird thing. So the policy got amended when the MPPF came out. So they introduced, it went to exceptional quality or innovative nature of design. So it changes. The or is, that's an hour's talk in itself. Because groundbreaking's no longer in there, the word, for me, that reinforces why the word innovative means something different to invention, pioneering. So many Paris 79 schemes are kind of always like, this is the house that's got this bit of tech on it. This is the house got this bit of tech on it. That's not what the policy's asking. You don't have to throw some trick at it, some weird, fancy bit of tech at the house. I'm just going to talk you through a series of technologies we've been playing with over. So on my house, we tried out a prototype technology called PVT. It's PV cells with a cooling system behind them. So by having a cooling system behind PV, the idea is you're cooling the panels to get more electricity, and the byproduct of that is heat. And we were taking the heat and we were dumping it in a microencapsulated paraffin wax phase change thermal store. Write that one down. It was a clever bit of tech, and the idea was soak up loads of sunshine in a relatively small body of water and effectively store a bigger volume of heat. Trouble was that we didn't have anywhere near the volume of capacity to store that heat. So it ended up that the temperature of the glycol that was trying to cool the panels down through the summer just rose and rose and rose, and we were cooking the panels. Just didn't have anywhere near enough volume of capacity to actually dump the heat. So the next house we did, we used a newer version of the panels, and then we thought, well, let's dump that heat out in the garden. So a slinky system out in the garden would normally, that's actually a solar technology, rather than thinking of it as geothermal technology. It relies on the sun actually heating the ground back up again as an annual cycle. So you're taking the energy out in the winter, you rely on the sun coming down to warm the garden up again to maintain coefficient of performance of the heat pump. The idea here was, well, let's take that energy in the summer and we effectively speed up the recharging of the ground during the summer. It worked very, very well. And it's a much vaster capacity that we can dump the heat. The glycol comes back up much cooler, cools the panels down more effectively. Fantastic. And then when the winter comes, that ground has got recharged and you take that energy out, maintaining a really good coefficient of performance on the heat pump. Excellent. So we changed our panels and we changed some of the things at home to sort of test some of this stuff out. We've been monitoring it all with Cambridge for 11 years. And right, okay, we're getting this sussed now. So the next house, we thought, well, okay, well, let's take this another. This is a fourth generation set of panels, like the ones we were trying out at home. But then we thought, well, instead of just dumping that energy in the garden, why not put it under the house? So we did 40 odd boreholes, just used a fence post auger, 1.5 metre deep, about 40 of them, and just ran effectively a cycle of pipes running glycol round. Insulation on the inside edge of strip footings, 250 mil of insulation under the slab. So we effectively use the house as the lid of a flask. And we heat the temperature up. So we're getting ground temperatures up by an extra sort of 15, 20 degrees beyond ambient through the summer. And then we use that as an interseasonal heat store to run the house during the winter. And it works remarkably well. Oh, formatting. Oh. So this is supposed to show January to December. So it's supposed to be showing there the PV generation as a kind of bell-shaped curve with most of that energy being generated in the summer. But even low energy buildings require their heat in the months where that solar energy isn't. So if you see sustainable or neutral carbon energy solutions and they say, well, there's PV panels running a heat pump, they're not addressing the fundamental issue that the PV's generating energy here and the heat pumps requiring energy at a different time of the year. So for me, a well-designed building, we try to solve that problem. And that's a seasonal, interseasonal energy cycle that needs to be solved. So the idea with the Earth Energy Bank is its coolest point in the ground is at the end of winter. And through the summer, as heat gets dumped in there, it increases the ground temperature. By the time you get to autumn, you've kind of got the temperature of the ground up to a peak. And then as you start requiring some heat load into your building, you take that energy out to run the house. And you get phenomenal coefficients of performance. So having got to a point now where we've got a system that works flipping well, of course we're using it again. Is it groundbreaking? No. But it's flipping brilliant. This house here costs, there's the clients, they're 82. There's John, there's Anne. That's us. We went around there as an office to go and visit it. Cost £15 a month to run that house. Everything. Well, the local MP come round, and they've been living in there about 18 months, and he says, this is brilliant, brilliant. I showed him all around. And he goes, so, John, how much does this house cost to run? And he said, well, funny enough, so we've just had the electricity company round to set our direct debit. They don't have biomass, they don't have oil, gas, none of that. So there's no wood. It's literally just run off solar panels, Earth Energy Bank. So there's a national grid connection. That's their utility bill. And they've come and they've gone through all the bills and everything else, and they've set their direct debit as £15 a month. £15 a month. So next week, the MP went into Parliament and brought it up in the Commons. He said, why can't we make buildings better than this? I thought, yay, that can help raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas if we get MPs raising it in Parliament. But it's doable. This stuff could work. The planning consent that we got most recently in September was a very interesting one, because this house actually is run on a set of normal PV panels up on the top of that roof and a biomass boiler. Nothing more than that, because it's set in 40 acres. There's loads of woodland to manage. So there's a generator, with all our schemes, generate on site, use on site is the philosophy we're trying to follow. And in the management of 40 acres of high-wheeled AONB, there's lots of wood, lots of twigs and logs. So the storage of twigs and logs is easy. It's a store of biomass that can help run this house. The inspector, in his decision, said, rigorous approach has led to a singular building its surrounding landscapes of the highest standards of design. This approach results in buildings that at least reflects the high standards of architecture. Many ways aspects exceeds them. Thank you very much. As an alternative, being innovative. Innovation has been employed to that end, and thermal performance does not seek to be truly innovative. Rather, it uses tried and tested methods to achieve energy and carbon footprint significantly less of a standard house. There's nothing wrong with this approach. It's allowed for in the alternative within paragraph 79E. So this decision in September 2019 for me is the first time it helps to move us, for me it helps to kind of reinforce that point that you don't have to throw some newfangled bit of kit and tech at a Para 79. It's a habit that we see happen quite a lot, but it does mean that the solution has to be well considered for its site. We look at the clean energy resources available to any site, which ones are appropriate, which ones are not, in helping to develop a solution that's right for each site. That Earth Energy Bank system isn't right for every site for one reason or another, but we will use it again where it's appropriate. And one would expect to see through a series of paragraph 79 houses over time the evolution of technologies and getting them better and reusing them when they're appropriate. It's nonsensical to think that you wouldn't develop something and then not use it again if the term groundbreaking, had been applicable. So I don't know. So I'm a bit early at the moment, so I can probably either take more questions or I can open more of the boxes, because I wasn't quite sure how the pacing of me going through this. Or Jonathan might be able to sort out my golden egg laying flying unicorn. But I do hope that my last slide works, because there she is. So my high bar of paragraph 79. The high bar of paragraph 79, it keeps going up. It doesn't keep bloody going up, and they're not golden egg laying flying unicorns. I could have put a million questions on here. You may have questions of your own that you wish to ask, or if any of those questions on there are things you'd like me to talk through, more than happy to do so. But thank you very much. I've gone a bit quicker than I planned, but maybe there's more time for questions if you have them. Thank you very much.